Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? No, says the bus driver from Washington. It wasn't me. No, says the violinist on the bus. I wasn't involved. No, says the songwriter from South Africa. I didn't even know about it. But let me ask you this. What if the sweat was poop? Sorry, I started playing Bioshock.
Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow?
Sunday, August 8th, 2004. A day that goes by a few different names. The Dave Matthews Band incident is a title that gives some details about what happened, sure, but it's a mouthful. So some have started calling it Poopgate for short, but we now live in an age where other Poopgates have gained prominence due to the internet just generally loving to put the word gate at the end of any word in a scandal, and we don't need to get into the other Poopgates today, but we also don't want to get them confused with the OG Poopgate, the one that started it all, the one that I reserve deep in the chili-tinged trenches of my mind, the day that will forever live in my own form of infamy as Brown Sabbath. I'm currently pretending to stand at Kinzie Street Bridge in Chicago, Illinois, a beacon of culture and American values. I don't know if any of that's true, I've never actually been there. Kinzie Street Bridge itself is 195 feet long. It was built in 1909 and spans over the absolutely gorgeous Chicago River. I mean, look at that water. Now, to keep the bridge from becoming slippery and requiring too much maintenance in the winter from ice buildup and to prevent flooding from damaging it, Kinzie Street Bridge is made from a sort of welded lattice grate design that allows snow, rain, and other liquid to pass right through to the Chicago River below it. On paper, this seems like a great idea.
Unfortunate incident.
Life imitating comedy, imitating art.
When the bus driver emptied the bus's septic
It was like
tank.
a
Downpour. Enter Dave Matthews, an arguably talented South African musician who gained an absolutely insane amount of popularity in the late 1900s among lesbians, hikers, and chicks with turtle tattoos, with his band creatively named the Dave Matthews Band. Now, some would say Matthews himself is a talented guitarist, vocalist, and eco-terrorist? The year 2004 could be considered a heyday for the band, who had been thriving at the time from their hit singles Ants Marching and Crash. August 7th, 2004. The band had just gotten finished playing a headline show at the Alpine Valley Music Theater in East Troy, Wisconsin, and they were going to play a second show the following night at the same theater. Now, between these two shows, the touring band, consisting of 5 big-ass tour buses, a big-ass crew, and 5 big-ass band members, decided that they wanted to stay in the big-ass Peninsula Hotel in Chicago. If they had just stayed in a hotel in Wisconsin, none of this may have ever happened in the first place. Who knows? But they didn't, and it did. So here we are. Imagine, if you will, you're taking a summertime vacation to Chicago with your beautiful romantic partner. You're both in love and navigating through life in the best way you know how. You're both fully committed, and you think that today would be a great day to profess your love to them. Taking in the rich history of one of the USA's biggest cities, you schedule a historic boat tour through the canals of the Chicago River. A romantic and relaxing day for you and your maybe future spouse. You get lunch and some drinks at a cafe, you pay your bill, and you and your loving partner rush to the Chicago River boat tour. You paid a cool $60 to get your 2 tickets, and in 2004, that's not chump change. You worked hard to earn this nice day. You two sit on the roof of the boat. Many people join you. You see families with children and older couples, and a few lone stragglers, but they don't seem dangerous. Just ignore them. The tour guide gets everyone started with some ham-fisted anecdotes about the city's history. Some people are forcing laughter to keep the tour guide from getting discouraged about his jokes and jumping into the river. But you don't care, as you're just getting lost in the moment with your true love. As you stare into each other's eyes, you move in for a kiss. And just then, 800 pounds of shit, piss, and microplastics get dumped on you and everyone else's heads on the fucking boat, dude. You still want to profess your love? Huh? You gonna propose? Because right around approximately 1 p.m., a tour bus thought to this day to belong to the Dave Matthews fleet zoomed over Kinzie Street Bridge, foxtailed piss and shit out of its little bus bum-bum. And yes, you heard me right. blasted all over the entire boat, full of 120 passengers. 800 pounds of poop. Certainly enough for everyone. Now, I should disclaim that while approximately 120 passengers total were on the boat, the stinky cargo mostly only hit those on the top deck of the boat, making up roughly 2/3 of the passengers total. Give or take a few people who may have been a level lower, sitting on one of the sides, and may have had a window open or something. To keep it simple though, let's just say it was exactly 2/3 of the passengers, so 80 people. By that math, each person hit would have taken just about 10 pounds of poop straight to the dome. Now, I'm sure you probably have a lot of questions, so I'll do my best to address anything you might be wondering. Namely, who was in that bus? When I first heard about this, my first instinct was that this was Dave Matthews himself up in that bus, and only in this situation did he have a mustache that he was twirling, and he waited for the exact perfect time to pull this lever that he had that just said dump the poop on it, as he just laughed and cackled. But that's not what happened, because that would be insane. As I mentioned before, there were 5 band members and 5 tour buses, meaning that every member could basically have their own bus. The bus in question, however, belonged to the band's violinist at the time, Boyd Tinsley. I highly doubt that all 800 pounds of the poop that came out of his bus that day belonged to him. And if it all did, So if it was Boyd Tinsley's bus, then he clearly conspired with the driver to do an easy waste dump over the bridge. And if that's the case, then case closed. Lock him up. Send him to jail. Good job today, everyone. Not so fast, bucko. You're racist. First of all, when authorities investigated the incident and questioned Tinsley, they found that he was not present on the bus at the time of the dumping. He even cooperated and flew in all the way from California for questioning when they confirmed this. So this means that the bus driver was really the only person who could have been held responsible for the dump, making this a conspiracy of one. But who really was the Osama bin Laden figure behind this musical bioterrorism attack? Perhaps to find the answers we're looking for, we might need to look into who owns the bus in the first place. On the day after the incident, August 9th, 2004, the Chicago Architecture Foundation claimed that they had a witness of the bus dumping. Good on this person for being able to see far enough past the misty, yellowish-brown miasma to get a good look at the bus's license plate. The witness then sent that license plate info over to Chicago PD as evidence. Thus, the bus was linked back to one man, and that man was none other than Jerry Fitzpatrick. Now, this man, Jerry, was the owner of all the buses on the Dave Matthews fleet, and boy oh boy was he grilled in the press about this. However, he vehemently denied that he was the driver of that very same bus. In fact, one of Dave Matthews' PR people even issued a statement saying that all of the Dave Matthews Band's buses were parked at the time of the dumping. Would they lie? A PR person lying? Have we lost all morals now? Who do we even trust? What is this? Needless to say, things are starting to look a bit muddy for old DMB at this point. And I'm no proctologist, but I'd wager they'd be best off just pinching their loafs right now and admitting guilt. Now, considering they may be all out of options at this point, why would they just decide to continue lying about this?
I think it was Lincoln Park.
Lincoln fucking Park. On August 7th, 2004, Lincoln Park headlined a show with Korn, Snoop Dogg, and The Used in Tinley Park, Illinois, at what was then called the Tweeter Center. I don't know what Tweeter is, but I imagine it was some form of Twitter for people from the South. That's all I can come up with. The next stop on that show for them was in Burgettstown, Philadelphia, on August 9th, one day after the shit hit the fans. Some of the people on the boat were Dave Matthews fans. Now, Burgettstown is roughly 8 hours east of Kinsey Street Bridge, with the shitstorm striking in the afternoon before the day of their scheduled show, and Kinsey Street Bridge only about 45 minutes away from the Tweeter Center. This is starting to seem a bit more plausible than I had originally thought, and the conspiracy theorist in me is now looking twice at this possible explanation given the tour dates, because as I had said before, the Dave Matthews Band was playing not one but 2 shows in Wisconsin, one on the 7th and one on the 8th, with this catastrophe happening between the two of those shows. Now, after their first show, why would they drive back almost in the middle of the night to Chicago and to their hotel when there are plenty of hotels in Wisconsin that they could have stayed at with a much shorter drive between shows? Not to mention, these buses are like hotels on wheels. Why drive that far in any case when you have that kind of luxury on the road? I mean, clearly the toilets worked, which puts us now at a challenging crossroads of who might be the responsible party. Despite offering their big-ass tour buses up to the authorities for big-ass DNA testing, the Dave Matthews Band clearly wanted to keep the stench off of themselves, which pointed to the next biggest band to pass through the area. And while DMB hadn't explicitly blamed Linkin Park for the tourist dusting, all they really had to do was deny involvement, and their fans did the rest. As far as I know, Linkin Park hasn't said a damn thing about the disaster since it happened. Timing-wise, it's starting to look extremely possible that this might not have been a Dave Matthews dump, but rather a Mike Shitnoda mudslide. Alas, this does get worse for Dave Matthews fans, all thanks to the power of police investigation. Now, while the Phantom of the Poopra was proven not to be Jerry Fitzpatrick, on August 25th, Chicago Mayor Dick Daley released video footage of the bus and the devastating brown cloud, providing strong evidence that the bus did, in fact, belong to Fitzpatrick, but at the time was being driven by a man named Stefan Wohl. My bad. And now we're getting to the point in the saga where the floaters start to sink. Jerry Fitzpatrick was able to prove his innocence by instructing then Sergeant Paul Gardner of Effingham, Illinois Police Department to inspect the amount of gravy in his bus's septic tank. Gardner had determined that there were far too many loaves in the tank for him to have dumped it so recently, as it was nearly full, which actually put Jerry in a prime spot to do the funniest thing ever. But this was not enough to let the crappy caper get away, as it was found that Wool's bus had parked at an East Bank Club gym parking lot not long after the incident. Authorities had reviewed the surveillance tapes, matched them with the others near the bridge, and found that his route was conducive to him being the perpetrator himself. The shitty chauffeur had a $70,000 lawsuit filed against him by the Illinois Attorney General, although he denied it was him at all, and the band backed him up on that. At a press conference regarding the fecal frontier, Mayor Dick Daley said, "That dump was absolutely unacceptable, okay?" But the Dave Matthews Band is still a really good band. After the investigation, it seemed as though the Dave Matthews Band simply had no other choice than to just throw Stefan Wohl under the stinky bus, as despite adhering strongly to his denial of involvement in Brown Sabbath, in March of 2005 he was found guilty of reckless conduct and discharging contaminants to cause water pollution. He was then sentenced to 150 hours of community service, received 18 months of probation, and fined $10,000 to be paid to the Friends of the Chicago River. The Dave Matthews Band also ended up paying $50,000 to the Chicago Park District, $50,000 to the Friends of the Chicago River, and paid the state of Illinois a big-ass cash settlement of $200,000. They also agreed to keep a log of all the times their buses empty their septic tanks. A log of logs, if you will. Now, Dave Matthews himself has said some things that could suggest his annoyance or acceptance with the incident, depending on how you look at it, saying at one point, "I will apologize for it as long as I have to," and at another point, "If Snoop Dogg had done it, it probably would have boosted his sales in Chicago." At the end of the day, it would appear that Wohl got off easy on any sort of charges that one may have gotten for directly attacking citizens, which is surprising, as you could probably consider what he did to be sensory assault, battery, terrorism even. Some of the passengers on that boat recalled the stenchy miasma as a, quote, wall of smell, or even a, quote, brownish yellow slurry. A passenger even lamented that her mouth was open at the time of the release. And not all of the victims were on the boat either. One woman named Lynn LaPlante drove through the brown mushroom cloud as the bus expelled its faded flatulence and said, "The windows were open. It was a beautiful day and we were driving and All of a sudden, the most deplorable smell hit us. I think it's become more of a touchstone, like a cultural or iconic Chicago touchstone now. I look at it with humor. I think it's funny. Me too, Lynn. Me too. After the tourist boat became the gravy boat, numerous passengers called the Chicago Architecture Foundation demanding refunds and compensation for the state of their clothing and equipment they brought on board. 5 passengers were rushed to the hospital for biohazard concerns after the christening, but no one was seriously hurt, diseased, or injured. Which is pretty surprising considering how slippery that boat's surfaces must have been. The boat, named Chicago's Little Lady, was promptly returned to dock ASAP by the Chicago Architecture Foundation. But could you imagine if it wasn't though and they just continued the tour? Once the boat was returned, all passengers were evacuated from the newly painted vessel, given full refunds, and the boat was thoroughly cleaned, making its return to service for its next scheduled tour at 3:00 p.m. The next passengers had to have noticed. The latest reports from passengers who were on Chicago's Shitty Lady that fateful day are humorously reminiscent for the most part, saying that they were at once very understandably upset about the ordeal, but over time it's become a funny story to tell people that they can laugh about. But that's honestly just what I've read about this, mostly on the internet. So this whole ordeal happened in 2004, but it gained popularity in 2020 while everyone was stuck inside. Remember that? It's funny how before the wave of attention to this happening, Dave Matthews was just a good band for Gen Xers who really enjoy hiking and granola bars. But after getting a whiff of what was really happening under their buses, whether you think it was Linkin Park or not, this just seems to be one of those dingleberries that Dave Matthews has just never been able to fully shake off, and it's left its scent on his career's legacy forever. But what do you think? Do you think that the Dave Matthews Band is at fault for this miscrap? Do you align with the theory that it may have been Linkin Park after all? And when I say that, I mean that as a question for both the Dave Matthews fans and the Linkin Park fans alike. Most importantly though, do you think that justice was truly served here? Let me know in the comments. And I know this is kind of a different video for me, but I'm certainly trying to branch out from my usual, bad movie explanations and Guitar Hero shorts. And I appreciate everybody for sticking with me through all of that. If you want me to cover something, let me know what you want me to cover in the comments as well, and I will definitely consider it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Love you lots, and that's all I got. Oh yeah, and this dude was never allowed to drive a bus for the Dave Matthews Band ever again.